Hey, how you doing, Bobby?
Oh, doing just great. And how about you guys? Everybody okay?
Yeah, everybody's fine. Dan, he wasn't able to make it.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, but we do have Bauer and Goshorn. Well, Mr. Bauer and Mr. Goshorn.
Okay, all right.
Hanging out with us. But what I'm going to do is Mr. Bauer is going to try to define here this thing called catastrophism. And I think he does a pretty good job. Anyway, I'll turn it over to Robert. After I introduce David, he might pop in here and have a few words to say about things too.
Howdy, y'all.
Okay, Robert.
Okay, Robert, it's all yours, man.
All right. Well, welcome to a campfire chat with USOKS, and this is going to be the first in a series on a topic that is known as catastrophism and the catastrophist studies. So for those who may not be aware of it or be new to the subject, I'm going to take a couple of minutes here and give some definitions of it to kind of level set the playing field that we'll be playing on this evening. Catastrophism. Catastrophism is the study of how geologic and hydrologic events have influenced and shaped biological life on Earth. Now, that is my short definition, but as we all know, there's a lot of authoritative, established places out there where they define these types of things. So we'll go to dictionary.com, which defines it as the doctrine that certain vast geological changes in Earth's history were caused by catastrophes rather than gradual evolutionary processes. Okay? Merriam-Webster defines it as a geological doctrine that changes in the Earth's crust have in the past been brought about suddenly by physical forces operating in ways that cannot be observed today. Britannica defines it as a doctrine that explains the differences in fossil forms encountered in successive stratigraphic levels as being the product of repeated cataclysmic occurrences and repeated new creations. The doctrine is generally associated with the great French naturalist Baron Georges Cuvier, 1769 to 1832. One 20th century expansion on Cuvier's views, in effect, a neo-catastrophist school, attempts to explain geologic history as a sequence of rhythms or pulsations of mountain building, transgression, and regression of the seas, and evolution and extinction of living organisms. Now, catastrophism is relatively new in the sense of over the last couple of hundred years. Basically, catastrophism was coined in the mid-18th century, around 1830, 1840. And there's a contrast of catastrophism, which is called uniformitarianism, which David Goshorn is going to go into in some detail as well. Now, Merriam-Webster also has a definition that explains a little bit of this uniformitarianism. And they say that what it is a geological doctrine that processes acting in the same manner as at present and over long spans of time are sufficient to account for all current geological features and all past geological changes. And this was first used basically around the 1860s. This doctrine in geology that physical, chemical, and biological processes now at work on and within the Earth have operated in general uniformity, i.e. in the same manner and with essentially the same intensity, through immensely long periods of time and are sufficient to account for all geologic change. In other words, the present is the key to the past. Now, these definitions are primarily based on observations and study of geologic evidence over the last 150 years or so by various researchers observing the remains of geologic and hydrologic marks around the globe And they've extrapolated from these findings what they think happened either over time or for a single event. Now, these events are most notably evident in geologic formations and movements such as earthquakes and volcanism, fossil remains, and examining the strata left behind in the classical definition of various epochs, Pleistocene, Holocene, Cambrian, etc. There's also a great deal of evidence in both the geologic record as well as written accounts from previous civilizations of catastrophic hydrological events, where the conveyance of billions of metric tons of water have caused devastation on both a regional and planetary scale. Most notably, the plethora of accounts of a great flood from literally every part of the globe. While the majority of these events have been thought to be of terrestrial nature, as the study and research began to show more frequency to those events, over the last 70 or so years, cosmic origins of catastrophic events have been shown to be more regular than previously appreciated. The most recent in our modern time being the Tunguska event that David Goshorn will get into. Now, in order to provide a little bit more clarity and some reference points on this subject, our present climate over the last 10,000 years has been a period of stability where what we know today as the latest iteration of modern humans has flourished and developed into the modern civilization we currently enjoy. However, current research and almost daily findings are posing questions to the established timeline of human habitation and development on Earth. This timeline is being challenged across multiple scientific disciplines, which are and have been too narrowly focused to take advantage of interdisciplinary knowledge, understanding, and theories. Now, one such example is the end of the last ice age. As seen from the view of uniformitarianism, the last ice age was a gradual process between regular cycles of glaciation and interglaciation, the period we're in now, allowing the current Holocene epoch to be a stable period of mild and warming climate, which allowed the human population to develop and flourish to our present day. However, ice core studies over the last several decades have shown that the end of the last ice age did not follow a smooth and gradual melting, throwing the uniformitarian definition into question. Indeed, what has been found is rapid melting, then freezing, followed by more rapid melting, during a period of around 15,000 to 13,000 years ago, much faster than the established view. Two periods, defined as meltwater pulse 1A and 1B, were separated by a return to full glacial cold for a period of about 1,400 years. Now, this finding, through the uniformitarian view, into a conundrum, as they looked for both the thermal source causing the two meltwater events, as well as caused the 1,400-year period of full glacial cold in between. At a conference to deal with this anomaly and their model in 1975, scientists decided that either the model was wrong or they were missing something, so that they decided to call it the energy paradox. And they decided to put it on the shelf and get back to it later, which they really haven't done. So here's an example of catastrophism in the sense of what happened during the last ice age was not a uniform event. There was something that happened both from a thermal source of heat as well as a return to full glacial cold that happened over a very short period of time that was neither uniform nor smooth. Now that's a terrestrial or Earth geological based observation as an example of the difference between what uniformitarian constructs would say and what catastrophist studies and their constructs would say. Now, the other side of catastrophism is not just terrestrial, but also cosmic. And on the subject of cosmic catastrophism, it's worth noting an event that happened in 1994 known as Shoemaker-Levy 9. Now, this event was a result of a discovery of a massive comet by Eugene and Carolyn Shoemaker and David Levy. This is the first time in known modern times where a cosmic body was observed, providing the first direct observation of an extraterrestrial collision of solar system objects, in this case directly impacting the planet Jupiter. Now, up until the Shoemaker-Levy 9 event, there were various studies that had been going on around the planet of impact craters or different events where there was either an impact or possibly an atmospheric explosion and spalling of various pieces of the comet or whatever the cosmic object was, and creating a scattered approach and marks left on the planet. There's various places around the Earth where you can see these different impressions and results left, but until Shoemaker-Levy 9, there had never been an observation of this type of event in our modern times. So Shoemaker-Levy 9 was a significant event in astronomy physics, to where it was actually that a single body broke up and then impacted a very object, in this case Jupiter. Now, catastrophism covers both celestial and terrestrial types of events. The written record throughout what we know of man's and humans' history on Earth is replete with all kinds of different stories of things happening in the sky, floods, civilizations being wiped out, geologic formations being significantly altered. And this is the essence of what catastrophism is understanding that there has been significant influences and changes and effects throughout the events that are recorded in ancient writings. And we believe that delving into these events and the rings, the psychology, etc., will be key to helping us understand some of the past that has been either hid or forgotten of our human history. I hope that gives everybody a foundation to understand what this topic is about. And we invite questions on the USOKS Global Connection page on Facebook as we go through this. It's a broad subject. It's very deep. Covers a lot of different scientific disciplines, as I mentioned earlier. One of the most fascinating ones that has not been appreciated, I think, that it should, is some of the cosmic events that have occurred in history. And with that, I'd like to invite David Goshwin to jump in here and talk to us about the one that we at least have some somewhat fresh evidence and knowledge of, being the Tunguska event back in 1908. David.
Well, hello, Robert. Thank you for the introduction. Tunguska was probably important because not only was it the one celestial event like that we encountered and could kind of do some sort of research into, even though the remoteness of it is pretty great. We also can compare that to Shoemaker-Levy, like you were bringing up, because it was a multiple sort of airburst or impact event, which is pretty interesting. What interests me about Tunguska is the fact that it was so far out into the wild and the wilderness that not a lot of real research was done on it, and there's a lot of hearsay, and you really have to kind of just use Google Earth and sort of look at the map and look at the geology of the area and kind of put your story together there. So I think it's a really good subject to kind of help us learn about catastrophism, an instantaneous event versus slow progressive methodical growth of mountains or whatever would be presented by the uniform. So yeah, I'd like to talk about some today. And we'll get to that for a bit.
All right, outstanding. Bob, I think that there's been of the events and research projects that you and I have been involved in that have some relevance to this whole topic.
I agree. I would like to talk to David about Tunguska. I was reading an on-the-ground observation today that was spotted in 1927. I'd like to read it out to you. So I'm quoting here from 1927. Suddenly in the north sky, the sky was split in two, and high above the forest, the whole northern part of the sky appeared covered with fire. The earth trembled. Reading this and reading other ancient texts and accounts of unexplained events, maybe people like us, for example, should pay more attention to the breakdown and investigate such texts and put them into context with what we now know in the 21st century.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that. I think that there's a lot of holes or like Swiss cheese almost with the mainstream views on all of this, and there's a lot of places that it could be examined in a more closer detail.
Well, yeah, because we have records now that are coming out from the comet that blew up over England in I-62.
Yeah.
And it broke up into three pieces. One went south, they say, to Bolivia. How they know that happened, I'm not sure, but it coincides with a lot of the weather changes. So maybe some of these events, they didn't have the internet like we have today. Hey guys, the comet just blew up over our house. By the way, if you don't prepare for
thanks for calling.
Yeah. Hopefully you'll get the message,
Yeah.
But back then, I guess the Pope even said, things like that don't fall from the sky.
No, never. Well, when the Pope says it, it's, back then, like you said earlier, Bob, when we were discussing this, it was pretty much the truth before he said it. It was assumed that if he said it, that was it.
Yeah. Hey, man, we can't admit something like that fell from the sky. You don't scare off these sheep.
Just some errant fireworks, that's all.
But we do read a lot of ancient texts that say things, explain nuclear explosions, etc., and it sounds very sort of primitive to our ears.
Yeah.
But when you look at what they're saying on the ground in 1927, if you actually put it into context with what we're seeing or reading nowadays.
I think somebody said 1908. Now we have another account from 1927.
Yes, 1927.
So maybe that came out of the bush,
Yeah, it was a guy on the ground.
Yeah. So
there was the National Academy of Sciences went in and had a group go in there and tried to pinpoint it, and they had some issues with the locals, and that's kind of standard knowledge now. If anybody's read about Tunguska, that these guys had gone in there and been, spooked, and they had to find some extra help, and it really didn't determine a whole lot.
The track, they had to get in there, and they had to tromp through.
It's thick.
Yeah,
it's bad in there.
It was pretty thick up in there. The way the trees, right underneath the blast, still stand straight up today.
Yeah, it's clear that it was an airburst.
Yeah, definitely. And Robert, he did some work on Google Earth, and he may have found a section of the spray pattern from it that finally came down.
Yeah, I've got 3 areas that I pinpointed. When he had suggested that, I looked into it, and if you just look around, you see these little areas where it's just such anomalous holes that that they're not naturally forming because they just look, like you said one time, Bob, that it looks like a shotgun blast.
Exactly. When these things come in from outer space, if they're a big one, like and they explode. You're saying the one at Tunguska might have been a peat moss type fiber.
Yes.
Oh, that.
Well, I think David knows quite a bit about it. Maybe.
Who?
Close one.
Knows about the material that it was.
Could be. Do you, David?
I'm here.
Hi. The impact at Tunguska, what was, what material was it made of?
What was the composition,
Well, they found, they found a lot of things. They didn't really find any verifiable evidence because of the time. They really weren't that advanced back then with their, techniques as we are today. And being that far in the bush, they really couldn't bring a whole lot back, I'm sure. But there was a lot of, typical meteorite and asteroid, evidence, metals and things you would see, from that sort of impact. It wasn't really like an ice event like a comet would have been or something that was mainly a chunk of ice or frozen gas.
So it wouldn't be like a volcano going off and would create a big major cloud that would block out the sun.
Yeah, they did say that it blocked out the sun for a period of time, but, I think the winds up there can be pretty fierce and they would carry that away in a pretty quick amount of time.
Yeah, that's definitely one thing for survival is the winds.
Well, another thing too is it relates to these atmospheric, not only atmospheric explosions like Tunguska, also the planetary impact is the angle, the declination of the approach. For example, it looks, from what we know now, and David, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it seems as though the object that came in that and created the Tunguska event was not at an angle that was going to have an impact. If anything, it was just going to skim through the atmosphere at the right time with the atmospheric pressure and the speed and whatever the components were of the material in that object. Those all reached a point of explosion. Now, there are other examples. For example, as an example, the Air Crater in Arizona was a direct 90-degree impact, if you will. It came straight in, and it left a massive crater that is still obviously there that people can go to and explore. And they're thinking that the timeline on that is somewhere, I think, in the 50,000 year range. That would have put it in the last glacial period when the Cordian and the Wisconsin sheets were still in place over North America. It would be fascinating to get a better understanding of if that had any impact at all during a glacial or interglacial period and having those ice sheets that were over North America.
It's good that you mentioned that meteor crater in Arizona because it's a whole lot like the crater in Australia, the Wolf Creek, I believe it's called, crater. They're direct impacts, 90 degrees. You just see by the debris field that the way they hit, it was almost the same trajectory, which is pretty odd to find two, which has led me, to even find more and more and more that we found. But Tunguska, David, I'm not, I've heard a bunch of different tales, about the way it was seen coming in. So there were some people, eyewitnesses, right, that watched it come in, and then.
Yes, quite a few. Actually, when I was doing a little research on it, a lot of the villages sort of all their stories aligned. Everyone kind of said there were 3 large impacts with one smaller afterwards. And, that ties in with what we saw with, Shoemaker Levy. So, you can't exclude the fact that it might have been a comet. But, what I also found in almost every report from all the villages and areas that there were artillery sounds, which numerous things falling, numerous pieces going in different directions.
Sonic booms,
sonic booms as everything broke through the atmosphere. It just kind of was mayhem. And, I think what happened was something like what we see in the Carolina Bays. It just, the trajectory of the object was, said to be 30 degrees by a team, but, that's that was done a long time ago, and it's really hard to tell when it's an airburst. But
yeah, the Carolina Bays was definitely double-aught buck, man.
Oh yeah, boom. Yep.
Yeah, that's a pattern that is hard to ignore for sure.
It's right there for us to see, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, and one of the researchers out there that I've been following, Randall Carlson, who's down here in Georgia, has been doing a lot of catastrophist studies the last several decades. He's putting together some research that not only ties potentially the Carolina Bays to the end of the last ice age as an event that may have contributed to either meltwater pulse 1A or 1B as a potential thermal source. But he's also done a lot of work on the floods, for example, the Missoula flood over in the mid and the mountain range and the western side of the continental United States.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
And those events, again, when about catastrophism, there's geological evidence that demonstrates that there was significant events all over the planet, whether it was a terrestrial source or a combination of a celestial terrestrial source. And I think that there hasn't been enough study and appreciation. Again, this goes back to one of the issues that a number of people are starting to get worked up about, and that's the interdisciplinary study of these different disciplines. I think there's too much of a narrow focus from geologists to anthropologists to biologists, etc., who get very narrow in their particular field of study and subject matter and don't communicate or have enough conversation at a minimum with other scientific disciplines to try to correlate some of the various anomalies that are seen. When you look at anthropology, typically you don't hear an anthropologist talk about the geology, with the exception of they found bones or artifacts in a certain structure.
Exactly. Go in there, and what you're describing is there's no teamwork. When they go in to a site, it's so compartmentalized that it takes forever for it to come out of the box and go to the next guy. Instead of bringing in a team, a multidiscipline team.
Right. That's what should be done.
Absolutely, everywhere.
Yeah, we have exceptions to the rule, out there. The Bosnian pyramids, like Tepe. We do have, some exceptions. Egypt, I'm a little curious, but at the bottom, at the end of the day, it's.
The thing is, they try to bring in the multidisciplinary context into Çatalhöyük with Schmidt, and he did move slightly out of the box, and it worked to a certain extent, but not the way that we would want to see it. Absolutely not.
These disciplinaries, cockamaniacs. Come on. Let's be rational. Let's take a look.
Bring in Jeff Goldblum, like in the movies. They always bring Jeff Goldblum in. The non-expert, and he saves the day. Or someone like James Spader,
Yeah, but looking at the different recorded, and now some we're finding that weren't recorded, but they were somewhere. But we have events all over this planet, that indicate a lot of things. On one of our future shows on this, we're going to interact in the group with coordinates to some of these places that we observed over the planet that indicate, we have different theories out there. We have the expanding Earth theory. And we also have, within those theories, we have the possibility of different orbits, different Earth sizes, things that have caused us to drift through our solar system as things have happened. Going to Velikovsky, worlds in collision. We have evidence that we're seeing that. So that all plays into our immediate view of catastrophism. Some of it could be local. Back in the day, local was, within 5,000 square miles, maybe even more, because of the communication that they had. So things happen.
Well, I think to that point, Bob, it's when you look at the ubiquity of flood myths and stories. I mean, they're all over the planet, and you could very easily, in my mind, you could look at hydrological events that could be caused. For example, let's go back to recent history. We had the Banda Sea. I think that was in 2005, and then we had Fukushima just a couple of years ago. And both of those were hydrological, the result of the event, of the tectonic or the earthquake and lithosphere movement, was a tsunami. The initial event is not what caused the devastation.
But according to record, just to butt in real quick, those were babies compared to some of the ones that we've heard about.
And I
Exactly.
just thought in there as well, I've got a question for David. Over the past couple of weeks, in our research group, we've been talking about dolmens, caves, underground cities, like NQU, for example.
Definitely.
Why, in your opinion, David, why is it so difficult for this civilization to understand that we have survived something in the past? And to Robert,
I think what happens with, through time, people just assume that, we've been here all along, just like the scientists and the anthropologists say. We've, been here, we've survived all this stuff, but nobody really addressed how we survived it or, what sort of events we survived. And then I look at dolmens and, of course we get the tomb theory right off the bat, they were tombs, and I'm sure some of them were repurposed in the years after they were used, but what was the initial use of a tiny little building with, slabs that weighed 15, 20 tons that really had no purpose aside from people hiding in it? And then you see
Yeah, for protection.
Yeah, you hide in that for a couple hours or a day, and, you got your food, and you pull the round ball over the door and close it up, and you're good.
Very similar to the plane of jars, only a different way. Maybe they had to dash around like mice, from A to B real quick. Well, really,
I'm sure they were running for their lives.
Well, the thing is what were they running from?
Yeah, it had to be from the sky. They wouldn't build a dolmen to hide from lava because it would just basically bury them in the lava. So.
No, but they could be hiding from something in the air. See, that's the part about catastrophes that a lot of people are missing out on is the level of acidic rain. So it rains, that just...
If you actually go down into Derry and Cougar and look at the ventilation systems, which I did,
it's ingenious.
that's an understatement, I agree.
Well, Derry and Cougar, they let you go down 11 levels or so, but there are levels that go way deeper than that they won't allow you into.
Absolutely.
So, and Derinkuyu is just one of the many sites, of course, in Turkey. That seems like the soils there allow them to really dig in quick.
Well, you have to wonder, why would they dig down like they did in Derinkuyu if they were looking to, hide from an event? Why wouldn't they just dig laterally and then have easy access to the places? So Derinkuyu might have been sort of a multi-purpose or a repurposed site because, I wouldn't see them digging down like that.
Temporarily. These people, they learn from their ancestors, and when we throw the timeline out the window for a while, and we take a look at, how condensed some of our, let's say, biblical historical teachings are, and we really spread them out on a time, scale, which actually layers is a lot easier to understand it. But when you stack them layers on top of each other, you really start seeing the depth of the beings, okay, that have been on this planet and their evolution. We have all these different types of skulls being found here and there that are different, and their timelines could be off. I mean, we have such a broad spectrum here of what's showing us the depths of our timeline and how humankind, whether it be the giants are here because there was less for gravity, there's a lot of theories out there that needs to be explored.
But from a catastrophism point of view, the number of places I personally have been on the planet, my goodness, it all goes underground, so something has happened time and time and time again. If you go to, everyone spouts off Easter Island. They all go to Easter Island, they all do the Moais, they all do the blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And
Seriously.
I went underground.
See, Anne's been underneath Easter Island.
Really?
Yeah. Okay, there's a network of lava tubes, okay,
Right.
that actually go back into the sea. And I don't know if you've ever seen lava tubes. They're an interesting
But
piece.
let me give you an example.
Yeah.
A lot of these places, the general public can just pop in and out, go down, get
Right,
out.
right.
But if you really go down, you actually end up in the ocean.
You end up in the
You
ocean.
end
Yeah.
up in the ocean. And then there was one that I went down, we had a really bad experience on Easter Island. My friend became very, very ill, and I had to deal with it.
Get her out of there, huh?
Get her out of there.
Gases or something, huh?
But yeah, it was really bad.
Well, you get down
But-
in some of them places, you get those molds,
The
that's,
thing is, I was,
Oh.
I don't know how
Yeah.
many feet, but I had cow carcass, I had human bones, I had, you name it, it was down
well,
there.
it might have gotten washed. Well, when you look at Rapa Nui,
no.
when you look at it, and now they show how far down the Moai go. You can definitely tell that land has been washed by tsunamis over and over and over again.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's no denying it. When you look at the pictures of the soils, from where they dig one of them up,
It's been re-stratified quite a bit.
so Rapa Nui, Easter Island, tsunamis, massive, massive, massive tsunamis. It's covered the island up over and over and over again. But
So, going back to a point that Anne made, as it relates to, having regional events where people, have either gone underground or they have scattered across the open seas to other islands or to other landmasses. If you have multiple, if you have a single event, again, going back to both the Bandasi and Fukushima within the last decade, if those people, imagine that we were 10,000 years ago and those events happened,
Yeah.
and people in that region, whoever was left, however they were able to survive and escape the remnants of it, wrote about those events.
Yes.
What would they sound like? It would, for all intents and purposes, what they would of their world would be a complete devastation of everything. They would most likely have, they would grab some oral teachings, some symbology or something else onto the actual event, which is what we see in the majority of historical writing, symbology that we have uncovered so far.
Yeah.
But to them, their entire world was devastated. So they would have written it along those lines, most likely. They would have
End of the world.
the entire Earth,
Well,
the world
it's
was
echoed. It's an echo that we've heard, over and over and over. It's an echo through time. And, you brought it up in the description earlier, Robert, where you mentioned basically the inertia of events, okay? And in one of our future shows here is we're going to have Jan Peter de Jong, and we'll get into that side of understanding, 3 different worlds, the possibility of 3 different orbits, to explain some of these changes that the Earth, has gone through over time, and we're going to have Klaus Dona on too, and the writings in stone that we found. So to continue, sorry for butting in, but
I think that's one of the things that's very important as people look at and try to reconstruct what happened in previous timelines and previous layers. I think that in some cases we'll find that there are what might appear to be individual layers are synchronicity as it relates to the layer.
Yeah,
so, for example,
exactly. Synchronicity is a very good term for that.
Excellent.
So my point there is that there could have been multiple events happening simultaneously around the planet, and the civilizations in those areas that were affected by those events would have written them according to their understanding and knowledge of the time. And
exactly. And now our time is, as we understand, we have a 23-degree tilt.
Right.
We have a wobble. I mean, so, looking at all those factors, something has caused that to come about throughout our history on this planet. Our existence on here, in one way, shape, or form, is really being questioned by the mainstream. But in the overall, when you look at the layers of time that we see in stone, the remnants, the only thing that would be left from these ancient civilizations is in stone. So
that's it. Giant stones.
Yeah, and that's all.
Belbeck,
But the other side of the story is, when we've been talking over the last months in all the groups about these primitive people and Neanderthals and blah de blah de blah de blah, is that if you look at something like, for example, Göbekli Tepe is a good example, and I do not agree with the temple scenario, as you all know, is that these people knew something was coming.
Yeah.
These people are our survivors. They knew it was coming, and they prepared for it.
Which coincides with, what I was saying about the freeze that came after the thaw. Okay? Right about that same time, we're hearing the possibilities of nuclear-type explosions in the southwest United States, what is presently the southwest United States. So they have found fallout all up and down the East Coast from a series of events. So we're still talking series that show that something happened in that window, let's call it, because what's 1,000 years sometimes, when we talk billions and upon millions. So,
well, to that point, Bob, one of the things that is starting to come out is back to the uniformitarianism view of the smooth and regular evolution and change within the geologic timetable. Is, for example, again, using the last ice age, because the melting and the refreezing happened in such a short period of time, literally, was in some cases, some of the, particularly like the Missoula flood work that's being done, is that the melting and the conveyance of this huge amount of water happened with days and weeks, not over 100 or thousands of years.
That had to have been a tidal wave when that wall gave way and let all the water come down out of there.
What's really weird, you guys, is that when they talk about that flash freezing or multiple day event, a lot of the stuff, if you've read Alan and Allaire's work, they've said that there were actual mammoths found standing. The carcasses, and they were found standing or in basically frozen where they were.
They had food in their mouth that they were still
absolutely.
masticating.
Oh yeah, they
right?
found them. Yeah, they've dropped to their knees with food in their mouth. They're still on their knees. which kind of, in a way, just to throw this in, they say those waves down in the Antarctic, they say, this was caused over time, this is layers of ice. There are waves that were actually flash frozen.
Absolutely.
Those are some pretty patient woolly mammoths.
Yeah. So when, both sides, top and bottom of the planet. Yeah.
Like standing at parade rest in the Navy.
Yeah, and we're seeing at that same timeline, okay, we're seeing the extinction in North America of the camel. We're seeing others.
3 different species of elephants. There was 130 megafauna that became extinct that were on the North American continent at the end of the last ice age. And you're talking, 100 pounds and bigger. You had sloths the size of Volkswagen Beetles. Okay?
Nice.
And then all of a sudden they're gone.
Well, it coincides with the black mat. Something happened that, and from what they're following, the black mat really covered a lot of the planet, and Robert Schoch's agreeing with it from what I'm hearing.
Yeah, he said it in the radio.
He did. But that's what we're looking at,
You're talking about the drift, right, Bob?
Huh? What's that, David?
Oh, I said you're talking about the drift, if I believe, right? When you say the black mat?
No, the black mat is actually a layer, okay, that is it's been identified globally, okay, especially coming out of North America.
And this is mainstream as well.
Mainstream as well is starting to recognize it. It's not just us,
Maybe that's why I'm not familiar with it. I'm not the big mainstreamer.
No, this is mainstream. This came out of the field, and then I did hear later that mainstream is recognizing this. But it's a layer of black material, okay, that has been identified, and it's not geologically speaking a very thick layer, but it's a consistent layer that is being found around the globe. There are places that I don't know if they haven't dug deep enough and they haven't found it, or it's non-existent. But in North America, it was like splat. Something happened, man. It wiped out everything from the southwest corners to the northwest. It's massive.
Clovis and everything.
It altered. Yeah, it was either a major crust issue. You know what I mean? I would say it would be a displacement. I'd say this. Something has. Especially along the west coast of North America and South America on down. You can definitely see the rise in the west coast of both of the continents.
So I'm seeing here that there's a lot of iridium in it. Kind of Googled it real quick, and
yeah.
you know what iridium means.
Well, it can mean a lot of things, but the thing is they're starting to say it's nuclear impact. So going back to craters like the Meteor Crater in Arizona, which is a pretty good hole, good sized hole in the ground. And yeah, the one in Australia, which is almost identical, so we're having sometimes, these multiple impacts that are oceans apart. Yeah, what goes up sometimes comes down,
And what's to say that one of these cosmic impacts didn't set off something like Toba or Krakatoa, or even, at least according to the timeline right now, Yellowstone last eruption was
I'm looking at
a long time ago in the 700 range, but maybe it was a minor eruption from Yellowstone, or something that may have contributed to that, or maybe it was a celestial event that
Rob
predicted it off.
So,
right?
Holy smokes, man! There's 27 layers of volcanic activity there. And in some of the layers, the trees are 12, 14 foot in diameter, okay? So in between just the Yellowstone alone, okay, in that caldera, there are 27 layers of I wish I would. I hope I'm not around when it goes off again.
I think, can I just go back to TOPA, Robert?
Yes.
Okay. TOPA is, in my opinion, is the only way they could explain a certain event, and that TOPA was triggered by something that happened to the planet. Would you agree with that, or what?
Well, yes, indeed. In fact, there's some very, I guess we could put it in the esoteric category, research that's been done on that, that suggests, and we're talking, TOPA, we're back in the 70, 80,000 before present era timeline.
Exactly. Somewhere between,
And
yeah.
The research that I've seen on it indicates that it was potentially triggered by the nation of civilization at that time that was there, and the work that they were doing trying to mine some energy. It's obviously, out there as it relates to the mainstream and the establishment, but I think that at least from a physics perspective, and if you allow yourself to think of the history of the human race going back much, much further than it is now. In fact, I think, in my opinion, I see at the end of the last ice age and the current Holocene that we're in now to be more of a rebooting of human civilization.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rather than the start as it's predominantly positioned today.
Definitely, I agree with you. That's a good. I agree. We're rebooting. We're coming out of sleep. We are waking up. And yada yada yada. I mean, I'm with you.
Yeah, I think that civilization goes much further back. In fact, we're seeing almost daily, particularly in the last 6 months, that everything from his original birth date and when he existed to Neanderthals dealing with Cro-Magnons and human or Homo sapiens. I mean, everything. Every time there's a new article, it's pushing back again, 1,000 or 2,000 or more years from what has been established by the mainstream as the timeline. Yeah. So it doesn't matter if it's Spears.
Illusion,
Yeah, and this is being done because of, majority of it is being done because of scientists and or independent researchers who are continuing to look. They're not accepting what's being told and being saying that, yes, this is a plausible and most likely timeline. They're continuing to dig and find and do more research. And with, obviously, the advent of the Internet and global connectivity, there's a lot of people that are like Evan and Stephen Strong. I mean, these guys are down there in Australia doing work that, the local mainstream scientists certainly aren't doing. The orthodox academia certainly isn't going after. And to go back to what we were talking about earlier on the multidisciplinary approach, I think one of the reasons that it doesn't happen is because each one of these individual disciplines has a set of parameters that has been established by them and their ilk that they have to adopt.
Okay, they have. Well, that's
right?
That's where I love us independent researchers. It's the protocol that they have to when they're unless they go in there as a team. I mean, they have to live beyond this wall. They call protocol. Oh, well, we can't let this out if this proper. Actually, that's a good disciplinary approach. But when it comes to piecing together things that don't need that in-depth research on everything just to know that it fits in the picture.
I mean, that's one of the reasons that I left the archaeological field.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is purely from that point of view, is that they would not include other disciplines. They would not,
right.
I go into
and I mean,
science.
we have to have it. We've been trying to get and build bridges. Actually, you mentioned the Strongs. The Strongs are definitely part of New Spearhead, trying to get this information out. You know what I mean? To get the information out. Yeah, some of the stuff that's presented, we don't know everything about it yet. But the internet has really made it possible that we can make these kind of connections.
Well, and it's being done with, from the standpoint of, and I think this is where, strangely enough, a lot of the current TV shows in the, like this NCIS, I think, and basically detective shows where what they're doing is they're taking a forensic approach. And one of my shows has always been Sherlock Holmes. And the cool thing about Sherlock was that this guy, he was multifaceted in his knowledge base. So he looked, his whole point, his whole approach to everything was observational deductive reasoning. And to understand each element in what you're seeing with enough knowledge to have a forensic approach to the knowledge in which you're investigating. And I think that the forensic approach is what's missing in the main Orthodox establishment. They have a very narrow focus, and they're not able to look outside of that focus. Whereas the independent researchers, like the Evan and Stephen Strongs, and you, Bob and Ann, David, the people that are involved with USOKS, they're independent researchers that aren't bound by any protocol or any defined set of data and way in which to look at things. And there's actually a forensic approach being taken to all of the available data. And that is what will lead us to, in my opinion, what really has happened and what our real history is all about.
That sounds really good. I think, the fact that, I'm sorry?
Go ahead, David. Go ahead.
I think the fact that, for me, I look at it from an engineering standpoint, and what else I look at it from an archetypical standpoint of an artist. And you have the mathematicians and the geologists, and, you really can't do the job properly without, one of each, at least, kind of chiming in there and using common sense.
Oh, common sense. Come on. Yeah. I mean, it'd be nice to have some common sense out there. I mean,
wouldn't that be nice?
Well, in understanding all this, I mean, we see all this stuff, and it's right there in front of us, and within hours sometimes, we have a discussion over something we pulled up, and we see things that I don't know. I have a hard time calling them anything but quacks. But, presenting something to them that 2-3 years down the road, we've been talking about it the whole time, and all of a sudden one of them decides, oh, you know what? Look what I discovered. It's something that we've been talking about as independent researchers for, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Some of us, have been connected here.
Like the news. You see the news, on RT or something like that, and then a week later it's on CNN.
Yeah,
exactly.
Or not at all.
Yeah, not at all. And that's the thing here. Okay, guys, speaking of which, or not at all, Bobby K here, we're going to take this little break, and we're going to turn it over to Bobby and let him do his thing, which we appreciate him allowing us to burn the fire.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks, Bobby K. Go for it.
Okay, we'll go for it. We're going to take about a 5-minute break. So sit back, relax, go to the washroom, get a cup of tea or a Coca-Cola or something. We got Benny King coming out to you right now. Stand by me. We'll be back with USOKS. Why isn't... Oh, there's my music. Gotcha!
When the night has come and the land is dark and the moon is the only light we'll see. No, I won't be a just as long as you stand by me. So darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Stand by me. If the sky that we look upon should tumble and fall, or the mountain should crumble to the sea, I won't cry, no I won't shed a tear, just as long as you stand by me. And darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand now. Stand by me. Stand by me.
I don't hear anything.
Hey, Bob, are you there?
Yeah.
Hey, any idea how long you guys usually go with the show? Hour and a half?
We have another hour.
Okay.
Yeah?
All right. Just want to make sure.
Is everyone still there? You still there?
I don't know if we're still live or not right now. No, Bobby.
Gentlemen.
Just can't back on.
Were we still in the middle of our break here, Bobby?
Yeah, we're gonna turn her down now.
No, go ahead. That's fine. Sorry.
We'll be back in about 1 minute with USOKS here live on PFRN. Okay, we're live at PFRN with the USOKS team here. I'm going to pass it over to Robert Bauer and Bob Newton right now. Go ahead, guys.
I don't know if Bauer has his headphones on yet. Sounds like he might have.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, there he is.
Hey.
Yeah.
Houston,
I can hear you.
Houston, we have a problem.
Yeah. Sounds like his chair might be the worst for wear.
That's a little radio trick to keep WD-40 by the chair.
Oh, that's for my bones.
Ah, I thought the Evan Williams was for that.
Hey, cream.
You guys are going to make me do so much editing. Oh,
Well, thank you, Bob.
go ahead, guys.
Yeah, we were born this way. We can't help it.
I know. I was born this way too, so maybe that's why we match up here.
Maybe some of us were hatched.
I know John, my co-host.
I'm a starseed. I came from space.
Yeah.
I was a test tube baby. I had a womb with a view.
Did they watch the test tube, Robert, beforehand?
No, it was shaken, not stirred.
That's what the problem is.
I think we're all shaken and stirred a little bit, Robert. I mean, come on.
That's a cataclysm in itself.
Yeah.
That's what my mother said when I came out.
And then she made a martini, right?
And she's been drinking ever since.
Yeah.
Oh, I wouldn't doubt it, man. I wouldn't.
No reason to stop.
Yeah, it's like when they start using alcohol, man, to, really talking about, catastrophes. We were down in Peru. We discovered this beer. It was called Cusqueña, and Cusqueña is made from a very, 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 very old Egyptian recipe. Not just one of them, but I think they have 3 of them that are made from 3 different.
Yeah, there's the black one, the gold one, and the normal one that I like.
Yeah, I mean, it was amazing.
Egyptian recipe?
Huh?
They're Egyptian recipes?
Yeah, they're Egyptian. It's amazing, how there's so many similarities down in Peru, which you find and maybe confused with Egyptian. I kind of sometimes wonder if the Egyptians weren't, maybe descendants of these people in Peru. But the beer that they make comes from a well they call Intermission era. It's a timeline, and the waters, I think we call them artesians, are very similar to an artesian well.
That sounds like the water in Ecuador that Klaus was discussing at one point.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if it's it has that kind of content. It's interesting you bring that stuff up right there, David, about the years. That.
Look at what happened.
We'll discuss that at a different time. But the silver and gold colloidal, I think it's called.
The colloidal?
Yeah, it's in the Lamana. I believe it's in Lamana.
It's in Ecuador. Lamana.
Yeah, it's very close to it. But what was it here not too long ago? We heard about the little blue guy.
Yeah, he passed away finally.
Yeah. So I'm not too sure about this stuff. When it comes to gold and silver.
Well, I think his fame might have got the best of him. He was, maybe a little wrapped up in, maybe addicted to it in a way.
I agree.
Like whatever it was doing for him.
Yeah, but it also opens the door to pictures, and paintings that we're seeing from the past. People.
They were drinking directly from the aquifers then, and from springs that gurgle.
Yes,
Roughly 3,000 feet on mountain.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, very, very well could be. And that's part of what we were looking at. When we're talking about catastrophism, is layers. Of like in Pompeii. They went in there and they dug through the layers of ash. Once they got down to the streets. They found these things. So that's what we're looking at. We're looking at the past. And sorrows actually in a lot of ways, unfortunately, of the past civilization. And, and we were talking about Klaus, Klaus Donner back in the day when he released his video about his skeptical approach to when he was presented the stone writings,
The Ica stones, you mean?
Pardon?
The Ica stones?
No. The stones with the writing on.
Okay.
Not the Ica stones or
Different stones.
Nothing to do with Father.
Well, basically, he just looked at global representations of language in the beginning.
It was written, it was stone writing, and the thing is when Klaus went into the room to look at these writings, he went in there and he came out and he goes, wow, it's very interesting that this writing, he goes, it's the same. He says, where did you find it? And basically it came from all over the world, so, he was kind of taken aback to it.
That's pretty good for me then. Pretty good,
Well, exactly, and that as we go into this timeline, this wormhole that that we're trying to present here. Like I said, we'll have Jan on and discussions of the layers as presented in the Panchas in their view, and we're going to have Jack Churchward on, helping us sort out some of the James Churchward code. And trying to understand a little bit more of our depths that show us deeper in the timeline. I mean, 12,500 years ago to 13,000, and we all know some really strange stuff happened on this planet. Also,
to that point, Bob, sorry to interrupt, but Gary David just posted an excellent link F in the Global Connections. Evidence for an extraterrestrial impact 12,900 years ago that contributed to the megafaunal extinctions and the Younger Dryas cooling.
Yeah.
And right in the first sentence here, there's a carbon-rich black layer dating to 12,900 years ago. It's been previously identified at 50 Clovis age sites across North America and appears contemporaneous with the abrupt onset of the Younger Dryas cooling, which is that 1,400-year period that I was mentioning.
Yeah, exactly.
On the outside.
Because,
So it's a PDF that you can download from the site. It's got a lot of very interesting information in it. So I encourage people to take a look at that. Thank you for that, Gary.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Gary. Gary David is.
that was really cool.
He's a very good researcher on the Southwest, and he knows exactly what we're talking about here. Because, right then there was a mass extinction out here.
Yeah, his books are very detailed.
Yeah.
Great.
I have to sit there and look at his star charts over and over and over and over again. He is very detailed. Yeah. And, it was a lot for see, I've been down to Mesa Verde and I've been intrigued by the way they're set up, and then I stumbled into Gary's work. Excuse me.
It's okay, I know.
But,
Water down.
But the thing is Gary has really added to it, because when we look at these symbols, David, you brought up Mu. When we look at the symbols of the North American Indians, the natives, we can trace all through the Hopi symbols of Mu. And Gary, I've chatted with him a couple times on this, And also, there's a couple other nations in North America that these symbols echo through time, and that's another one of the facets of what we're looking at in catastrophism, how through symbology and through symbols we can also identify migrations and survival, people who survived from the layer before. That's another real important thing. And yeah, thanks, Gary, for posting that, because a lot of people need to connect with the black mat. It's one of those, like Tunguska, only this thing was big, and we're not sure. They say, North America was nuked. but we do know that when a comet or a piece of a comet, I mean, let's go, what if Ison did not go around the sun and do its little destructive act and everything like that? But what happens if Ison, I mean, we saw evidence that Ison was coming because it was in our skies. I mean, some really cool impacts, sort of. They came in with really nice fireworks. But what happens if Ison didn't go around the sun? It had come toward the Earth, and we knew it was coming. I mean, that somebody mentioned about GT earlier. How did? Okay, yeah, it was ended. But how did they know something was coming to where they would meticulously? And you look at GT. I mean, that place was covered up fairly well. They knew something was going to happen, and they did their best. I mean, most of the stones uncovered so far aren't even cracked. So they, it wasn't a random act of random selection taking care of GT. It was hands and buckets and buckets and buckets and buckets of rocks and dirt.
A lot of sand to cover that whole plain there, and that.
Yeah, well, it just wasn't sand. It was rocks and dirt. I mean,
they had to fill it all in carefully to keep from pushing things over and.
Exactly. So we have, Shock even jumps in there and says 13,500. So we got to give him his due there. But if it was covered up 13,005, when was the actual construction date? I mean, now we can go backwards, and also, the Bosnian pyramids. They did the carbon dating, which. Is not exactly accurate, but they chose to take the low end of 29,500 years ago as to when they were constructed, which goes to the beginning of the Ice Age, before the times that Bauer brought up a little while ago. And
that really looks that old too. When you take a look at some of those images that Sam's put up and other people, it really has a very old look to it, not like some of the megaliths we see that are supposed to be 10 or 11,000 years old now. It's pretty beat up.
Well, that's where Shock, I mean, I respect Shock in a lot of, places, but when he made his snap judgment, I feel it was really a snap judgment on the Bosnian pyramids, because he didn't see the age of it. One of the first things that I started trying to pry out of Klaus Dona was, and this is a couple years back, was, Klaus, are these pre-Ice Age? That's something I really wanted to know. Of course, Klaus won't tell you. But then, they released it, and yeah, so the low end was 29.2. So that takes us pre-Ice Age. So it's almost like, were the Bosnian pyramids actually built? I mean, because there's a lot of things about the pyramids that's coming out that, is very interesting, to say the least. There's still some more scientific data that's going to be added, but I think by the next conference, it's really, going to show even more about the possibilities. We've talked about Darren Kuyu. Now we have to add in, and also we have to add in the Bosnian pyramids, and also with Gary David's work on the ant people. That's my favorite term for these people. Were the ant people, I mean, they went underground, and the Bosnian pyramids, Klaus, he's the one who first said, hey, there's tunnels down here, and they found them, they followed the plugs, now they're on the other side of the plugs. So, Klaus has done some very good investigative work, to prove, with all that tunnel system down there, that these people lived underground also. And they.
Well, it brings you back to the tunnels and Darren Kuyu and the cataclysms that have happened, and then 29,000 years ago, you're looking.
See something. See, that's exactly okay. We're saying
back then
this Ice Age started. They're saying 30,000, 35,000 years ago the cooling started.
Right.
Well, if you look, basically, the information that's available right now, and Gary David just posted another excellent article from the BBC regarding the ice core clue climate catastrophe. So, Gary, thank you. One of the things that is available we have the ice cores that we have right now go back about 250,000 years as they are currently dated from Greenland, and they go back about 400,000 years as it relates to Antarctica. And one of the things that has been demonstrated through those cores is this periodic and cyclical nature of glaciation and interglacial periods. One of the studies that has been done on just the cyclical nature of glacial versus interglacial periods shows that in the current Holocene, in the current interglacial period we are in now, it is on average by a few thousand years longer than any of the other interglacial periods up through this 400,000 year time frame. Now, what that says a number of things, obviously. There is a cyclical nature to the glacial and the ice age periods that happen on Earth.
When you say okay, Robert, when you say give us, okay, are we talking the 26,000 year flip,
the ice ages seem to have a 30 to 40,000 year period of in between glacial and interglacial. The interglacial seem to last somewhere in the 6,000 to 8,000 range as far as years, and the glacial periods are in the 20+ thousand years. So we have longer periods of cold than we have of warmer temperatures like we are in now.
Yeah.
And the current research says that the Holocene that we're in now is about 2,000 to 3,000 years longer than the average of all of the other interglacial periods throughout this 400,000 year timeline. Now, that's quite fascinating on a number of levels. There's a whole bunch of different things that come to mind as it relates to reasons why there is this cyclical nature of this cold and then warming period. Some research indicates that something along the lines of what's known as the orbital variation theory come into play, which is basically that theory says that over several million years of time, our distance to the sun varies. For a period of time, we are closer to the sun in our helical orbit, or helical trajectory, as it most likely is, and other times we're further away. There's also obviously the precession, there's the wobble, there are potential influences, cosmic weather, various regions of space that have densities of different types of cosmic elements, gamma rays, all kinds of different things that are out in space that in our short period of time of knowledge that we have over the last 150 or so years, that where knowledge has increased exponentially, none of these things are real to us in that sense because we haven't experienced any of these things. They're all geological evidence, they're all written evidence, they're now scientific evidence that's being found, for example, in these ice core samples. So one of the things that's an interesting thought, I'll just throw this out there and see what you think of this. Take the Shoemaker-Levy 9 event, and let's go back in time 5,000 years. And let's say that for some reason, somehow, knowledge that's been attributed to the Dogon tribe, for example, or even the Maya, for cosmological, calendrical measurements and metrics, that somehow that comet was a known body that traveled through the heavens, much like Halley's Comet, for example, a much longer period. So let's say that 5,000 years ago, somebody knew, for whatever reason, had the knowledge of this occurring cyclical event that would happen in the heavens. And because they knew it, much like the Mayans knew of eclipses, both lunar and solar,
Right.
that somebody could essentially prophesy that this great celestial event was going to happen.
Well, we have a friend, Gilbert DeJong, who's really brought up a lot of recurrence information on Halley's Comet and how its path has influences. So, very compelling stuff. But when we, take that to a broader scale, we knew about Caholtec and Hale-Bopp. I've seen ancient stonework where they carved comets in stone, and it looked identical to what I saw in the skies. So maybe there is a pattern, a cycle that we go through.
Well, the Quetzalcoatl's of all the different societies and civilizations, everybody has a Quetzalcoatl or a feathered serpent, and they've left the information there for us.
Well, the thing is, feathered serpent, we know how far back that goes, but that's even the layers that we're in right now. Is we're still coming out of the groggy states of amnesia in a lot of ways because we work together. A lot of us in the group, they're not here tonight on the show, but what we're laying out is a lot of the things the USOKS has been working on over time is to show the depths of the layers that are intertwined with these catastrophes, whether they be natural, tsunamis, this flood story that has echoed through time. It goes back to a lot of the catastrophism that we're talking about that would be associated with an expanding Earth, a change in orbit, whether it be Velikovsky, Venus come flying through here and played pool with our solar system. We have so many variables that
and see that point right there, Bob, is one of the ones that is just absolutely, it's fascinating on one hand, and that's the most important thing, but it's dumbfounding to me that the scientific establishment, particularly as it relates to anthropology and archaeology, when they look at and do their best to decipher the ancient writings of the various civilizations, there's this default that to take these stories as stories, not facts, not even based on any kind of relevant facts as it relates to those people and the times and the things that they saw. But it's a complete discount that they were on some magical drink or food that provided some really out there experiences and thoughts that they then wrote down as their stories.
Exactly.
When in fact, the majority of what I believe is that the majority of these writings, and this is what Velikovsky based his theory on, this is what David Talbot with Signs of an Alien Sky or Symbols of an Alien Sky is based on, is the fact that what these people wrote, what they symbolized, what they, in a lot of cases, grafted their own teachings morally and spiritually onto these events actually happened. And there is more evidence, in my opinion, that these events, a lot of them, possibly a vast majority of them, are more cyclical in nature than random. I think that there are random events that happen. I think,
the random ones are the ones that just really throw the whole equation off. We have to question the cycle, but the evidence is there. It's in patterns. It's like we travel through dark areas that influence our planet. And not only our planet, but our being.
From a cycle point of view, are you taking into consideration a universal point of view, or just from an Earth stance?
You mean universal in the sense of something like the Yuga model, or
yeah.
What do you mean? I think that there is, I haven't studied enough of that to feel comfortable drawing a conclusion, but what I do know of it, I think that it does represent more of a cyclical model as opposed to, I mean, the Mayas, right? Everybody went nuts over what I believe is a misinterpretation of what they wrote. But they had specific delineation of edges and how they ended, right? Whether it was fire or water or some type of cataclysmic event that happened. And even with the Atlantean and even Lemurian or Mu stories what we know of them, all ended with some type of catastrophe.
Yes.
So that to me is one of the most important components of catastrophist studies and catastrophism is the fact that it is literally all over. All accounts, whether they are symbolic or metaphoric or specific to certain civilizations and their history and their story.
Yeah, they're stories or creation stories, and see, that's where, if I can step in there with that point, is, a lot of these stories, they end with a disaster, but also, we have these other prophecies out there that are the beginning stories. For a long time, we used to kind of chuckle when the Mayas said they came from the underground. Also, as time has gone on, we've learned about the ant people that saved the Hopis that Gary David talks about. Also, we have Darren Kuyu. We have so many of these places around the globe. We can't say that all of them were used for certain things like living underground or surviving, but we do know that some were constructed on purpose to do this, and some of them were converted, natural places, which could include the Bosnian pyramids.
I'm looking very much forward to Graham Hancock's review of the Gunung Padang site that he's been at. I think he's on his way back now, but
that's a really cool site.
What a fascinating site based on the information that he's been able to gather at this point. They're talking about laying the 100+ foot depth of chambers one after another. Just to get in there, that's one of those places like Nan Madal that would be fascinating to try to understand, right?
It's on your bucket list, right? Yeah.
That's right.
See, what a lot of people don't realize, Robert, is 3-4 years ago, people were listening to the depths of what we were presenting in USOKS. They thought we were crazy.
I know.
to suggest that the tsunamis, okay, because I happen to, the church ward research, even though he's vague in a lot of places, I did follow through with a lot of the research and ask myself the questions, as to if this landmass, we don't know exactly, I'm not going to go that far, but this landmass disappeared in a day, which is echoed more than once. It's echoed in Atlantis. Atlantis went down in a day. So-and-so went down in a day. We have all these echoing legends and myths that went down through time, and we have to, oh my goodness, I forgot what I was saying.
Well, you were on a subject that I had something else I wanted to toss into the mix.
Yeah,
let's go back to this Ice Age component. Now, based on the information that's currently available, the ice shelf that was on the North American continent was essentially centered over what's now known as Huron Bay. And when you look at, again, use Google Earth, and you take a look at that bay, it's essentially it's like a depression. It's an isostatic depression.
Yeah, it's still
And
there.
when you put the ice shelf, you're talking a couple of miles thick. You're talking several hundred billion metric tons of ice,
Right.
a massive weight that would have had an impact on our orbital position and the way that the Earth is not only tilted, but also, you start throwing in things like magnetic pole shifts and so forth, and even throwing a little hapgood, and you can start seeing all kinds of different possibilities of what may have occurred. But let's think about just the ice for a second. That much ice is water, and I don't want to get into the whole where did the water come from subject, because that's something I think we should get into that maybe the second or third on this series. But
Yes, sir.
let's just take the ice.
Yeah.
The amount of water that was in that ice essentially dropped the current ocean levels somewhere around 400 feet from where they are currently. Okay? Now, that in and of itself, so let's go back 12,000, 15,000 years ago. 15,000 years ago is essentially the height prior to the end of the last ice age.
Yeah.
Now, at that point, around the world, the sea levels were essentially about 400 feet lower.
Yes.
Now, people like Graham Hancock and a few others have, in fact, Underworld, Graham Hancock's, that's literally a tome of research that he's done about underwater ruins of ancient civilizations, is one of the best I've seen. I haven't seen really many people go after the whole concept of, all right, 12,000 years ago, and we start getting back into the Bosnian period time, even the pyramids at Giza, several other sites, Nan Madol, the entire Micronesia, Polynesia, Indonesia area. If you have sea levels that are 400 foot lower than they are today, imagine a massive amount of land that would be visible, that would be inhabitable, that was most likely inhabited, right?
Displaced, Robert. I mean,
I'm sorry?
displaced, because when you're talking about the transfer of that kind of weight, okay, if you were to take all the water off the planet, okay, and look at the planet as it is right now without water, you would be amazed at what the planet really looks like. So just the weight alone, I think, plays in our, like you were talking about the ice sheet that was 2 miles thick, okay? That definitely pushes the Earth down. Sweden, I forget, has risen 18, 20 feet since the ice has melted off of it. I mean, so, yeah, we see even continents, they spring back somewhat. So the weight of ice, yeah, is amazing. So taking that...
Well, it's not just the weight of the ice. My main point there was that the amount of landmass that's been subsumed since the last ice age as a result of the melting of the water, or the melting of the ice, and that water flowing into the oceans. If you look at, for example, Dwarka over in India, is one that I think Ancient Aliens, History Channel, and of course Graham Hancock has covered.
Yeah.
Yonaguni over in Japan.
Right.
There are so many. I think it's quite possible that a good deal of our true history will be found along coastlines and in the island chains and areas of the Pacific, where possibly more relevant and important data will be found as it relates to Lemuria and Mu, and even Atlantis for that matter, whether it's High Brazil or it's outside the Strait of Gibraltar or wherever that may be. And to me, I think it's more of a civilization than an actual place, although there might have been a central place, very much along the lines of what most likely Mu and Lemuria were like.
Right. When we bring in, more people on this subject of the inertia effect, I mean, at one time, we didn't have plate tectonics. It was all one plate. And then something broke that plate, something cracked that shell. It's very evident that it's happened through time. So water, as you said, that could be the fifth or sixth show, because it is a puzzle. as to where the water came from that actually helps balance us out. We have the tides. I mean, we are strongly influenced by a flow. The Earth itself.
Can I just button?
Yeah.
Button? I'm agreeing with Robert big time, because the majority of what we are missing is underwater. And the mainstream archaeologists, apart from a few, and I'll mention the Italian team in Turkey, which are excellent, the underwater archaeologists, there are very few teams that actually do both. So there are very few teams that study underwater archaeology, and especially underwater petroglyphs. That is a huge problem in this day and age. And yeah, there is just so much underwater, and people don't accept it. A good example is the Baltic anomaly. Okay? Everyone's up in arms about that. It's all a hoax, it's a UFO, it's you name it, whatever. And in my opinion, if they really do the research and there is something down there, you can bet your bottom dollar that it's Hanan Pacha or something similar.
Well, the thing is this backfill of water across the planet, when we take into consideration places like Petra, Jordan, I mean, you have places that are 30, 40, I think David and I have had a couple conversations, they're 30, 40 feet in the air. We also have places out in the southwest where these petroglyphs are on the wall. And they're
why did they build them up so high? You know, it looks like stairs going down to a dock.
There's a water line there, and it's like
exactly.
It's like, where did the water go? And really, it seemed like it had to have either gone real fast, or those some real old glyphs on the wall that they carved hundreds of thousands of years ago, and they just survived because the water went away. But the water line is right there. Same thing in Petra, Jordan, and through those regions where you find these places that are 30, 40, 50 feet in the air.
Well, same as Turkey.
And some of them are really high, in Turkey.
Yeah, there's a lot of them in Turkey.
Yeah, I mean, to actually see the level in Turkey, I had to go up in a balloon.
Yeah.
I had to go up.
But the thing is if those places were full of water, even if there was some kind of natural dam, see, that's one of the things we found in Peru, too, is they made a lot of lakes back up in the mountains, because they have water.
And they're still doing it today.
And they're doing it today. These springs, they spring up out of the ground at 15,000 feet, and beautiful, pure, clean water, fresh water,
Well, that's going into Schellberger's work. When you talk about water that's gone that far through the strata and the geology there.
Yeah.
It's totally different when it gets back to the spring head. And it's nothing like it was when it fell.
Yeah, exactly. So weighing in all this, the inertias. I've been saying inertia for a long time. A lot of people having a hard time, maybe because I didn't describe it properly. But if these theories that we're hearing, if even 1/3 of what is presented by all the different ones, especially the ones that involve the possibilities of different orbits, the ones that possibilities of different gravities. Stephen Hurl and Jan and a couple others, but those guys have really started presenting some pretty good stuff when it comes to their theory on the size of animals. We've been taught, at one time we had real high levels of CO2 and this and that, and it created these 3-foot-long dragonflies, and how about the, 450-ton was behemoths, those big old dinosaurs. I mean, the concept of having a different gravity, which coincides with the giant stuff that we're, connecting globally. I mean,
Jim Beer.
Yeah, Jim Vera has been doing a lot of stuff. Klaus Dona, he presented that heel bone, that when they calculated it out, it was from about a 29-foot skeleton. And, we got those reports all over the world. Cecilia, she did a beautiful spread on giants and stuff. That she's connected with Jim Vera and them.
Yeah.
And
Well, you can see it right in your backyard there, Bob, when you see an iguana or an animal in your yard.
Absolutely, I've been there.
So why are all the lizards in my yard smaller? And back then they were large. Kind of like a few dinosaurs for myself.
Along the Front Range, we had some pretty good sized lizards.
Yeah.
The thing is a lot of things vanished. Over a couple layers, and I think that's what's happening. Is a lot of us independent researchers, we're catching these layers, and we're starting to identify them even more as to the depths of how far we really go back. I mean, we have a place right down the road from where we're at right now. It's called Garden of the Gods. And looking way back in time, Ann and I and my sister and actually just owned this place. It's very special. Over and over and over since 1967, I have identified, I believe, a culture that's even older than what we found. I mean, the evidence is there on these rocks, but the Utes say they've been there forever. They are one of the few that say we don't have a migration story. So, talking about giants, these people that worked on those rocks there, they were big people. So we know that because the evidence is along the Front Range that we had 12-foot, 13-foot people that lived here also.
One of the things that's interesting to throw out there as a speculation is, at the end, in fact, I've got to make a quick note here that Gary David has just posted a short piece from an essay he's working on that correlates the 4 Hopi world ages with scientific data, and it looks extremely interesting. Yeah. Looking forward to that, Gary. But think about this. There is essentially about 130 identified megafauna species that died out at the end of the last ice age.
Yes.
So we're talking, at least 3 different species of elephants, camels, sloths, as I mentioned, that grew to the size of Volkswagen Beetles. Huge fauna. Now, the prevailing orthodox theory is that these megafauna died out because of human hunting. But that's hard to swallow if you think about the same, if humans were in the same climate environment as these megafauna, we would have suffered just as much from that climate as the megafauna did. And hunting it is like, when you have animals that size, they need very large areas of range for feed. These things were eating hundreds of pounds of food a day. So you had to have an environment that enabled or allowed them to have that kind of grazing to grow and develop, and they had longer gestation periods. They just had, everything was larger and longer then. Right. What's to say that didn't also apply to humans?
Thank you.
Is it possible that during this megafauna period that there was mega humans as well?
Absolutely. And it would have been hard for megafauna to escape a cataclysm too.
Hey, exactly. Smack
the smaller animals would have been able to hide easier.
Well, let's look at it. You have hummingbirds. Okay, we know hummingbirds were 2 feet. We also know that dragonflies were 2 to 3 feet.
Sure.
So now, they have found the titanoboa so far, and it was like 50, 60 feet, right? But it could have been much larger than that. So
megalodon.
Yeah, and your Allosaurus and your Brontosauruses and all of those animals. I mean, They were massive. I mean, I don't know.
Well, you got to figure, where did they go after a cataclysm? The food was destroyed. There wasn't much shelter for a 90-foot-long brontosaurus. He would have been swept away easier than the smaller creatures.
Yeah, you have, today, you have the coyotes at your heels. I mean, you have these damn old T-Rexes, which we know, they just, them and their little cousins were all over the place.
Yeah. Well, the ice caves prove a lot of that. When you read about the ice caves, and they find a lot of the stuff just stacked one layer upon another. Just so many animals just.
Yeah.
Well, they found a couple caves. They found a couple caves here in Aspen, somewhere up around Aspen, somewhere,
yeah.
where all these bones, were washed down into this cave system.
And were either hiding in there, or they just got blasted in there by the tsunami.
Blasted, it was from floods and all that stuff, and it just happened to be the low point where they collected. But, a lot of times, a lot of the bones stuck together, in the general vicinity. So, I mean, we know 13,000 years ago there were camels here. Not just one, there was more than one species of camel.
Yeah.
Which I'm not too familiar with it, but I mean, you have the comparison down in Peru and the highlands, the Altiplano. You have the alpaca and the llama and the guanaco, which are all in the camel family.
Well, that's the way it is in Malta as well. A lot of the surrounding areas of Malta show similar animals, and there's no way they really swam from Malta, so they all had to live on a similar landmass.
Right, so the thing is, when they have those collector pits like that, and you're finding multiple, I mean, the giant sloth, and they all just, the bones, of course, they were buried at a certain time.
Or mixed in with other things they wouldn't ordinarily be mixed in with.
Exactly, you have saber-tooth tigers, all things, all in this one pit, But to find them, and then in Boulder here, I forget, maybe it's 8 years ago or so, a landscape crew found all these stone implements in this guy's yard when they were working on it. And they uncovered 83, 89 of these artifacts. And, using the, like Klaus Dona did, the size comparison to the stone tool as to the size of human that would have, wielded it. We're talking these people were 12 foot, 13 foot tall, not...
I don't know many people who can swing a 70-pound axe.
Oh, no, especially made out of stone, we're talking about attached to a tree limb, maybe the tree trunk,
Sure.
And swung around. I mean, for one of us to pick something up like that with the handle on it, we couldn't do it. Come on, guys. Down in Ecuador right now, there's some really cool stuff coming out about the City of Giants, the pyramids down in there. So we have to look at a layer, or whatever it was. I'm not into that Nephilim type thing anymore.
It's multiple layers.
But because it's multiple layers, that the giants, that they were big and we kept getting smaller. Here we are now, our average is between 4 feet and 7 feet. That's our average height now. But at one time, is it like the theories being presented? At one time, did we have these lesser gravities? Were we a different being? One of the things that really knocked me out in this mainstream world is, we're more than willing to add all these ape-looking like people, skulls found into our genome. But when it comes to the elongated skulls and them types of people that we know, no, they weren't all head-boarded. Okay, we know a lot of them were natural. I've witnessed them. I've seen them myself. We had not only big ones, we had small ones too. So what we're talking about is, why are those left out of the sequencing? That
left out of the equation.
Left out of the equation. Period. Yeah, like Ann says, full stop. Why are they left out of the equation when they're right there? There's evidence that they were there. I mean, we have so many questions, and that's what catastrophism is, kind of like the trash can of what happened. You know, what was it that has changed this over time?
It seems like, you know, there's this very, very long history of humanoid inhabitants on the planet, and you can go all over the place from, you know, the origins and sources and hybridization, etc., of the various humanoid forms that have been found. But at a minimum, there is obviously some type of correlation between humanoid habitation, population, development, rise and demise, and catastrophism as it relates to what has happened for that specific civilization, that layer, that time period, etc. And just going back to what we were talking about a minute ago, you were talking about the petroglyphs down in the southwest that are high up on rocks. Well, if indeed, like the megafauna during and prior to, most importantly prior to the last ice age, and maybe over a couple of successive ice ages, there was the large megafauna. Well, what's to say there wasn't, again, a larger humanoid that existed along with that larger fauna? Whether there was, you know, less gravity, Earth expansion theory, whatever causation or correlation may be at play, or maybe many at one given time. Just like today we have yellow race, brown race, white race, red race.
The mankind's.
We most likely had something along those lines in previous iterations of humanoid development, and as it rose and falls, and as it came and went. And this is something that is more increasingly more evident as the true history of humans as we know them, in all the various mutations, hybridations, whatever they might be, throughout the history of what we as two-leggeds, as the Native Americans refer to us as, how we had manifested and what we had done and what we had accomplished. And it's quite clear that when you have evidence like the Dogon tribe that have this knowledge and this history that goes back tens of thousands of years about things that they possibly could not have known with what we understand their story to be, that knowledge came somewhere, somehow. What's to say that that isn't a regular, recurring thing that has happened throughout our history? And that is what I think catastrophism will help us understand.
What a great way to put it, Robert. Excellent.
Yeah, good deal. And the thing is, guys, is we have to shut her down. And we're going to have to go back into the corners and regroup and bring out another show. This was excellent and
Fabulous.
Guys, it's been an honor being on with you, and hopefully we can do this again sometime. I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. This is just episode 1, David.
Yeah, of this season. We have to thank Bobby Kay over there at Project Freedom Radio.
Thanks, Bobby.
Thanks, Bobby.
Welcome, guys.
Many thanks.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, we're live at Project Freedom Radio, and we're going to thank USOKS for coming in tonight. The USOKS Global Connection Campfire is what you're going to listen to. We're going to have more of these coming up very soon. And have yourselves a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. We're not going to be doing a show on the December 24th or December 31st because we got Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve. And we love you all so much, but we also love our families. We gotta spend it with them. So we'll see you in the new year, and we'll pull in you guys for sure. Great show, guys. Terrific.